Hello, hello. Nobody. Nobody's here yet. That's fine. I'm going to try to post these videos after this is all done. So until some people hop on, I'm just going to get started. Hello, hello. Somebody jump on. All right, I'm just going to get started here. I am going to be working on this 1/18 scale Marvel Universe Wolverine. This is one that I already made. Hey, Paul, how's it going? Just started, so you haven't missed anything. This is one that I've already made. This is going to be the one I make for myself, Brown Suit Wolverine. For this one, I'm using this Captain Britain buck. I think this was from the first Avenger series. I can't remember. So anyway, I've already made him, and I've modified the hips. I'll get into detail about these in a little bit, the thighs, where I got those from. But so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I've already done these two legs, and I've done the, where is it? Up here. The right leg for this one. So as you can see, that's kind of the end product. That's what we're going for. It's got good range of motion. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. I'm going to take that as a yes. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, all right, awesome. First thing I'm going to do is heat this up and pop off this ankle here. All I use for that is just a blow dryer I have under my workbench here. To heat that up, pop that off. We're going to use that part as well. This is the leg, lower leg from Captain Brit or U.S. Agent here. And this is actually where I got the thighs from. I didn't like these thighs. This is the standard Marvel Universe Wolverine. Comes with these goofy ball hips, and I think the thighs are a little too thin, and to try to modify the hips and not replace the thighs would be a total pain in the ass. So I found some stocky, kind of bulky thighs from this line. This is one here. So I basically just slid an X-Acto right in there, and then carefully just remove that. So then I took that gap there, filled that in with some Procreate putty, which is what you see there. And then after I get this ankle done, I'm gonna drill out a little socket there so that it can fit on that ball peg. So if you guys got any questions along the way, I'll try to keep my eye on the chat and answer them as I go. So next thing I gotta do is pop off this ankle because I'm going to use that disc joint for the peg that goes into this foot. If that doesn't make sense yet, hopefully it will later. So more blow drying. Pop that off. Procreate putty is another 2-part epoxy. It's this stuff here. So you can mix it in different ratios, 40-60, 50-50, or 60-40 with the white and the black. And that gives you different curing softness. So I typically always use the 40-60 because it gives you a more flexible end product. And I don't have anything here, but if you look on my website, if you look at like Swordsman or Deathstroke, and the scales I did for Captain America, those were all made in Procreate putty because they're better for armor and more form-fitting type stuff. Also, the Daredevil I did the DD on his chest out of that stuff. So it's really good for rolling out. Like I said, you can make it very flexible. Even the 1/18th scale Angela I actually made her sash out of that stuff, and I embedded a really thin wire in it, and you can kind of twist it up almost like a twist tie. So it's pretty cool. And this one, to answer the other question, this one, the brown suit's going to be for me, and the tiger stripe is going to be a commission, or is a commission. All right, so I need to remove this disc joint because I need to create a foot that'll accept the rocker peg from the other thing. So I'm just kind of carefully cutting around the ankle here. I don't want to cut too far down because this is all going to be visible. So I'm going to try to keep this video to about an hour. It took me about that long to do each of these other legs, but I should be better at it by now, but I'll give myself an hour to get through this. Yeah, sorry, I'm still way backed up in commission, so it's gonna be a while before I have something that's just for sale again. All right, so got that peg out of there. And I always save these because you never know. So now I just want to kind of create a nice little ankle pocket. That's good enough for now. Okay, now what do I want to do next? I want to take the leg and I need to hollow this out a lot more because it is going to receive this into that. So bear with me with more noise. For this, I'm just using a little round bit Dremel attachment. I'll grind that off. All right, that's probably good for now. I gotta make some fine adjustments later. Okay, now I'm gonna modify this foot so that it fits up into that. So for that, I'm just gonna cut away until I have kind of a nice little cone shaped thing. So I'm just trying to carefully cut away until I have a decent shape here, but I don't want to cut too much because if I do, I'll expose this part of the disc over here, which is going to go inside the calf. And if I expose that, then it risks getting glue in the joint and screwing the whole thing up. All right, so let's see how that fits. Also, while I'm doing this, this peg, because I did these other few, this peg is too big for the foot, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that down. And modify it so it doesn't completely bulge out that foot once I stick it in there. want to shave it down here so it still has a little bit of a mushroom cap to it. All right, that's good for now. Let's try to test fit it. So that's still a little too big. What's up, Egg for Brains? How you doing? Now that I started this, I probably should have dropped a post on Instagram to let people know I was starting, but oh well. This is gonna go up, you know, on my YouTube channel so people can watch it later. I'm doing all right. I got a drink and I'm playing with toys, so can't complain. All right, so I'm gonna have to hollow out the shin a little bit more. This is a pretty delicate process. May not be the most fun thing to view, I know, but I really don't want to screw it up because then I have to tear up a whole other foot. No problem. I'm glad I could help. All right, so I gotta hollow out more of that. If you guys have any other questions just about customizing in general or other stuff I've made or just anything, hit me up. Mostly from, Egg asked where I learned custom making from. Mostly just from online sources and just fooling around with stuff myself. One guy by the name of Noodle Chow, he doesn't do much anymore, but he made a lot of the 4-inch scale customs, and he showed me this technique a long time ago. I used to actually make it with 1 foot. I would carefully cut that out and then just flip it upside down. But the problem with that is as you saw when I cut that out, you leave a lot of the disc exposed, and then when you glue it in, you run the risk of gluing the disc shut. But yeah, like just different websites, Figure Realm. I actually watch a lot of like professional painters and professional sculptors and just a whole bunch of different kind of craft and hobby people, because I can get a lot of inspiration from them, even if it's not necessarily related to customizing action figures. So that's getting better. Alright, so that's pretty good. Before I do that, so now I'm going to drill a hole. You can see that. I'm going to drill a hole into there, stick the peg in. For that, I have these little Dremel drills here. I've thought about it, but I don't know. It's most of their artists, from my understanding, are a lot of freelance artists that do one-off pieces or one-off figures. It's not necessarily the most steady job, but I mean, it might be pretty cool. So with that, the most important thing is obviously not drilling through the bottom of the foot, but going in at the right angle. You go too flat, you won't be able to get enough depth. You go too far down that way, you lose a lot of range of motion. So you want that kind of nice 30-degree, somewhat perpendicular angle. So now I know, because I did these other figures, that this little weird divot in the ankle, it's probably hard to see. I know that goes on the inside. There's a slight curve to it, so I want it on the inside. So I'm going to mark the front here. And now I'm going to Dremel a little bit of a tip to that so it's easier to shove into the foot. All right, so now I know that's the front. There's that. That's gonna go in there. Oh, forgot one thing. So I need, because there's a little bit of a, round tip on that, I need to hollow out a bit here. So I'm gonna use the little smaller little circle Dremel piece and just kind of shove it in there and spin it around. The reason I'm not doing this with the, you know, the motorized piece is because I don't want to completely blow out the hole and make this too loose. This is actually, if you've seen my latest Daredevil custom, this is how I hollowed out the billy clubs to fit the magnets inside of them. I just hand drilled it with one of these. Just slowly kind of spun it with my fingers. It took forever, but if I were to use the you know, the RPMs on that thing, it would have melted the styrene, so I had to go about it pretty carefully. All right, that should be better. All right. So that's pretty good. It adds a tiny bit of height, but not enough to really make me worry. Here's the original guy. You know, I'm gonna shorten it a little bit more by sinking that ankle into the foot a bit. It's a little lower. It's a little better. One of the good things about this too is the stripe on the boot. Line that up with the peg and I can paint the stripe black to then match that. You have a continuous flow there. All right, so now we got to get that thing up in there. And I don't want to just glue it, because I want it as sturdy as possible. And if I were to just glue it, then I'd be relying very much on the surface of this touching all of the surface of that, which once that's pegged in there, that's not guaranteed that everything's touching everything. So in order to fix that, I'm going to use, this is just a bit of Aves Epoxy Sculpt. This is another two-parter. It's one that pretty much everybody uses. You mix part A, you mix part B, you get a couple hours of working time. But this dries, this cures hard enough to drill and sand and smooth and all that. So I'm just gonna take a bit of this. I don't really need to be too careful about how I place it because a bunch of it's gonna squish around and pop out, but that's not a big deal. It's mainly just to fill up any voids that are stuck in here. Clean this out a bit. So now, tiny bit of glue. If you're curious about the glue I use, Zap-A-Gap. Works pretty well. It's got a good consistency to it. It's not too thick, not too thin. And it's better than like your, normal super glue, crazy glue type stuff. So I guess it's a hobby grade. So I just kind of want to squish that in there. Make sure my joint's lined up with my black stripe there. Make sure everything's in line. And then just take my toothpick and kind of fill in. I'm going to come back and sculpt over all of this. I'll use some of the wrinkles that are already there in the sculpt and just use those to kind of blend that joint in so that looks like one solid piece. So if you want to see like a finished product of this, somewhat of this method, the Vulture, Marvel Universe Vulture I made, had these type of ankles. The Jubilees, I made 2 Jubilees. They both had this. I think that may be it. Did I do it for Drax? No. So that's in there pretty good. Matches the other side pretty well. So now I'm going to drill a little hip pocket or socket to fit on this. This is the X-Force, Marvel Universe X-Force Wolverine body. It's also the same body used in this, I forget the name of this one, First Class. So this is the body that my client chose. He wanted that. I'll probably do some more modifications. I got some different arm options I'm going to use for that. But with this one, I'll go ahead and get into this now. This one, obviously, it already had the T-joint there for the hip pegs, which work well, and they give a good range of motion. This one, I may need to sink that a little deeper, but right now you have a really awesome range of motion on this guy. So you're going to be able to pose this thing in pretty much any way you want. So because of those US Agent, we still have the upper thigh swivel, double jointed knees, thanks to the Wolverine, and now ankle rockers, thanks to me. So yeah, I need to drill that out carefully. Same thing I kind of did for the foot, is make a little pocket within the hole so that it can sit on there and grab that peg. For the one I'm making for me, I used this Captain Britain body, and I like this one. I shaved down these ribs a little bit because they were a little funky, but I like the thickness of it. It's very stocky, very thick. I'm most likely going to replace this neck joint with a hinge, and obviously add some new shoulders and arms and whatnot. But so you still get a pretty good range of motion with this one too. You just gotta turn it up and kind of rotate it a little bit. You don't have as much space around the hip as you do with this one. So, but you still get pretty decent out to the side. And it's the same thighs, so same upper thigh swivel, double jointed knees, and all that goodness. And with all my figures, I cover up the peg holes and, excuse me a second. All right, so first step, I'm using my 5/64 drill bit. That doesn't really matter, but that's just, I'm gonna end up widening the hole, but I always like to use a smaller bit, basically as a pilot hole. Because if you use the bit size that you actually may need for the peg or for the little ball here, and you accidentally mess up, you're liable to make the hole way too big and screw everything up. And that's no good. So it's hard to tell, but I got a tiny little mark on my drill bit, which actually helps me know how deep into that I need to go. So now I'm going to replace that and go back to the little ball bit. I'm sure these things have official names, but I don't normally talk to myself when I'm customizing, so I don't have names for all these things. So all right, so cut that out, and if you can see, there's a bit of a little cave in there. And then I drilled up here, because if you look at like the standard pegs that come with these figures, you know, they have that kind of long joint in them, which allows you to get that outward motion. So I want to come up to almost 90 degrees here. And the other thing I learned with the one I was making myself is to make sure your hole is wide enough, because if it's not, you'll force it in there and you end up splitting it. Now I gotta like re-sculpt that and fix all that. Oh, and while I have this open, if you saw earlier, this guy had pegs, had hip pegs just like this, which peg up into the abdomen, which basically they create the same crappy ball joint that this guy has, only they're sculpted a little nicer, so it looks a little better, but you still have kind of the same problems. You got to turn the hip to move it in certain directions. So I didn't want that, so I took this peg, this little T-bar from Marvel Universe Captain America, one of these guys. Cracked this lower torso apart, drilled out the space, filled in some epoxy in all those areas, set that in there, sandwiched it in, put some, that's all Procreate in there. Procreate, when it cures, because it's more flexible, it provides a bit more grip. So that's why I use that to fill in a lot of those voids. So sandwich that in there, got it nice and centered. So then there you go. You have a your normal T-bar hips. But this guy, I didn't have to do that because it came with him. So now I'm going to carefully being careful not to split it apart. Oh, and I split it. See? Should have made it wider. Oh well. But it's on there. So I'll probably take these in just a bit more so that you have a cleaner line coming down the side of the torso here. But in general, a really good range of motion, both front and to the side. So this dude's gonna be able to pose pretty freaking sweet. Unlike this ass clown who is the first one to fall off my shelf every time I put him up. So you get your boring single joint there, and they pivot, but that never does any good. And these hips are awful. It's a carryover from the old Toy Biz days that never really liked it. And I didn't collect Toy Biz figures because of issues like that. All right. So if you guys got any last questions, I'm happy to answer them. But if not, I think that's going to be it for tonight. If you want to watch this again, like I said, I'm going to try to post this up afterwards. I might maybe cut it down a little bit to leave out some of the more boring parts. But yeah, I appreciate anyone who sat through this whole thing with me. I'll try to keep doing these maybe weekly or bi-weekly and do updates along the way with specific things, maybe with the neck joint. You know, for the hands here, I got to replace these hands because obviously these claws are awful. And I have these guys to work with. I'm not sure where these are from, but these are pretty awesome. So I'm not sure if I'm going to replace the whole forearm yet, or if I'm just going to, you know, modify the wrist there to allow these to peg in. Not too sure about that just yet. I still need shoulders for this guy. I don't know what I'm going to use. But this guy's going to be a whole mix of different parts, so it's going to be pretty cool. Most of the time I usually just use a base figure and a couple random fodder parts and do a lot of sculpting. But this time, me and my buddy and my client, we wanted something that, you know, something that Wolverine deserves, kind of the definitive version. So anyway, I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure to check out my website and all that other good stuff. Follow me on Instagram if you don't already. The next video goes up. All right. See y'all later.